The Mouse Bride, a folktale retold by Heather Forrest. Some background about our author. Heather Forrest is an award-winning author, storyteller, and musician. In her storytelling, she incorporates many different elements, including poetry, prose, guitar, and song. When she begins working on a story to tell, she starts by singing the story until she gets just the right rhythm and feeling she is after. She lives on a small family farm in Huntington, New York, with her husband. The selection The Mouse Bride is a folk tale from Finland that she retold in her book Wonder Tales from Around the World. Now, before we get started reading, I just want you guys to know that a folk tale is a genre, and it's a story originating in popular culture, typically passed on by word of mouth. And usually in the story, there's some kind of aspect of with magic or a transformation, like a ugly creature turned into a beautiful princess. So let's get started. Long ago, when the world was filled with wonder, there was a farmer who had 3 sons. The 2 older sons took pleasure in teasing their youngest brother, who was so kind-hearted he could never even sweep a spider from the cobwebs in the corner. Now one day the farmer brought his sons to a field where 3 trees stood. "It is time for you to be wed," he said. "Each of you must cut down a sapling. When it falls, walk forward in the direction it points, and you will find your sweetheart." The oldest son cut the largest sapling, and it fell pointing north. "What luck!" he shouted. "I know of a fine maiden who lives in a house just north of here. I will go and ask for her hand in marriage." The next oldest son cut a sapling, and it fell pointing south. "I too shall live in happiness," said the second son, "for there is a delightful young woman who lives in a house just south of here. I will go and ask her to be my bride." But when the youngest son cut his sapling, it pointed towards the forest where there was no houses at all. "You'll find a pointy-eared sweetheart with sharp teeth in that forest," laughed his 2 brothers. "I will trust fate and my chances," said the youngest son. He carved a beautiful walking stick from the tree and set off in the direction of the woods. The young man had not gone far into the forest when he came upon a cottage made of gray logs. He knocked on the door. A pleasant voice said, "Enter, please." When he walked inside, he looked everywhere but saw no one. "Here I am," said the voice. "I am so glad to have company. I have been very lonely." The young man stared in amazement. There on the table was a dainty blue-eyed mouse with its gray fur as sleek as velvet. "You can speak?" the young man said. "Certainly I can speak, but I prefer to sing," she said gaily, and she began a lively tune. The young man applauded her, amazed. Then she curtsied and asked, "What brings you here?" "I am searching for a sweetheart," he replied. "Well then, how about me?" said the mouse. "You're not exactly the type of sweetheart I was seeking," said the young man politely as he turned to leave. "Oh," she sighed, "I am so sad to hear that, for I have longed to meet someone just like you." She began such an enchanting love song, the young man stood motionless at the door. "Please don't stop," he pleaded when she finished her song. "I want that song to go on and on. Strange as it seems, perhaps you could be my sweetheart." "Then come to visit me at this time tomorrow," she said with a smile and a twitch of her silken whiskers. "I promise I will return," said the young man as he left, and all the way home his heart quickened as he thought about the mouse and her beautiful song. When he arrived at the farm that evening, his 2 brothers were bragging to their father. "The woman I met has beautiful rosy cheeks," said the oldest son. "The lovely maiden I met," bragged the next oldest son, "is the fairest in the countryside. Her hair is as black as a raven's wing." But they teased the youngest brother before he could speak a word, saying, "Who could you find in the woods but a pointy-eared, sharp-toothed beast?" "I met the most enchanting singer," said the lad hesitantly, "and I cannot stop thinking about her. She has a captivating voice, sky-blue eyes, a beautiful smile, and she dresses in the very finest gray velvet. She even invited me to return tomorrow." "A princess, no doubt," the brother shouted sarcastically. "He's making this up. Who could love him?" "Congratulations to each of you on meeting sweethearts," said their father. But attractive looks alone do not make for a happy hearth. Tomorrow I should like to see the kind of bread your sweethearts bake." The next morning the youngest son set out at dawn. When he arrived at the cottage, the mouse greeted him eagerly, saying, "I am delighted that you have kept your promise to return." The lad blushed with embarrassment and said, "I told my father and brothers that ever since we met, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. But I did not tell them that you are a mouse. Now my father would like to see the kind of bread you bake." "Oh," he moaned, "my cruel brothers will certainly ridicule me when I arrive home tonight empty-handed." "I cannot bear to think of them mocking you. You will not go home empty-handed," said the mouse. "Of course I can bake bread." She clapped her paws, and 100 gray mice appeared as she commanded. "Bring me the finest grains of wheat from the field." Fascinated, the young man stayed all day watching the marvelous effort as the little mouse directed the baking of a fine loaf of wheaten bread. She sang as she worked and enraptured the young man's ears with her music. The afternoon passed so quickly with their cheerful conversation and laughter, the young man hardly noticed that the sun was setting. "I must hurry and leave," he said. "Please take this loaf as a gift to your father," said the mouse, waving him goodbye. "I hope that you will come again tomorrow." "Of course I'll return," assured the young man. "I would rather be here than anywhere else." He traveled back home with the loaf under his arm. That night, around the dinner table, the oldest brother proudly handed the farmer a loaf of rye bread made by his sweetheart and boasted, "See how hearty and well baked it is." The second oldest brother handed the farmer some barley bread made by his sweetheart and bragged, "My sweetheart's bread is crusty and healthy to eat." But when the youngest brother handed his father the fine loaf of wheaten bread, the farmer exclaimed, "Wheat bread? Only the richest among us eat wheat bread." The two older brothers bickered over who was to get the biggest piece of wheat bread and said, as they stuffed their mouths, "But there's no house in the woods for miles. What kind of sweetheart could you have found?" "One whose conversation can make me forget the time of day," replied the lad. "I am pleased that your sweethearts bake such fine bread," said the farmer. "Skillful hands add comfort to a home. Tomorrow I should like to see the kind of cloth they can weave." The next morning the lad set out again to visit the mouse in the woods. "Come in," said the little mouse when she heard him knock. She sang him a tune, and a smile spread across his face. "I wish you could weave as well as you bake and sing, but how could that be possible?" said the lad with a sigh. "My father would like to see the kind of cloth you make." "Love makes everything possible," said the mouse, clapping her paws. Once again 100 mice appeared as she said, "Fetch me strands of the finest flax." Each mouse quickly returned with one strand of flax. The little mouse spun the flax into thread on a tiny spinning wheel. The young man stared in amazement as she wove a fine piece of linen on a miniature loom. They kept company all afternoon, talking and laughing while she worked. The time sped by so quickly, the sun was setting before the young man realized it. "It's done," she finally said, folding the small patch of delicate cloth in a walnut shell. "Take it to your father as a gift, and I do hope your heart brings you here tomorrow." The lad left for home with the walnut shell tucked carefully in his pocket. That night, around the hearth fire, each brother brought forward the cloth made by their sweethearts. "Here's some coarse but sturdy cotton made by my love," boasted the first brother proudly. "Here is some cotton and linen weave made by my love, and it is fancier than yours," bragged the second brother. "Here is a walnut," said the youngest brother, as his older brothers howled. "He has no sweetheart. He's brought a forest nut instead of some cloth," they squealed. "Appearances can be deceptive," said the lad. "Open the nut, father." The two older brothers stopped laughing and gawked in silence as the farmer opened the shell and held up the fine web of linen. "I have never seen such delicate work," said the farmer, admiring the cloth. "Sons, I must meet your sweethearts. Bring them home tomorrow so that I may see your brides-to-be," he said. The lad's face flushed red as he imagined himself presenting the little mouse to his father and brothers as his bride. "This is ridiculous," he thought. "I cannot marry a mouse. I must seek deeper in the forest for a proper human sweetheart." But in the morning, as the young man approached the cottage, He could not resist stopping for a moment. He thought, I will tell her politely that I won't be visiting anymore. I need to find one of my own kind. But then, surely I will hurt her feelings. She is the most delightful companion I've ever met. Oh, I have never been more confused. As he nervously stood at the cottage door wondering what to do, the little mouse called out, Welcome! Come in! I have composed a love song for you. The moment he entered the room, she began to sing her beautiful song. His heart swelled with joy, and every doubt he had about presenting her to his family disappeared with the first tones of her sweet voice. My father wishes to meet you, he said simply. Please come with me to visit him. Very well, I should travel in the finest style, replied the mouse. She clapped her paws, and 6 black mice appeared, pulling a tiny coach made of a chestnut burr with a toadstool for a canopy. The mouse, regal as a queen, climbed into the coach. With the youngest son walking alongside, they set out for his home. When they arrived at the river, a hunter passed them on the bridge. He looked down at the mouse, coach, and 6, and exclaimed, Ho, what is this? A pack of vile rodents? I hate rats. If you please, sir, said the lad, these are not vile rodents. I'll not allow you to call them so. I've killed every rodent that has crossed my path, said the bully, looming dangerously over the lad. Open your eyes and look more carefully, said the young man bravely. Here before you rides the most delightful creature one could chance to meet. Disgusting rats, glowered the man, and with his heavy boot he kicked the coach and 6 into the swift water below the bridge. Heartless, cruel man, screamed the lad as he jumped into the river to save the mouse. I've rid the world of some useless pests, the hunter shouted, and continued on his way. The lad desperately tried to reach the sinking coach, but as the raging water swirled around the little mouse, she vanished in the rushing river. Exhausted and almost drowned, the lad made his way to the river bank. He climbed out of the water and wept. Now that you're gone, he wailed, I regret even one moment's doubt that you were indeed my true love. Suddenly, with great splash and a spray of mist, out of the water came 6 black horses, pulling a fine golden carriage. In the carriage was a beautiful woman with sparkling blue eyes, wearing a gray velvet gown. Who are you? The lad asked, rubbing his eyes to be sure he was seeing clearly. Don't you recognize me? She asked. Her lovely musical voice cheered his heart. She explained, I am a royal princess. A Lapland witch, jealous of my beauty, enchanted me to be a mouse until such time as a kind-hearted man could truly love me for myself. You broke the spell when you risked your life and declared your love. I am your mouse bride, if you will have me, she said with a shy smile. I loved you before when we were of different worlds, he said. How could I love you less now? He climbed into the coach, and together they rode to his father's house. His brothers tumbled over one another to greet the elegant guest at their gate. But it's our brother, they gawked as he stepped out of the coach holding the princess's hand. After a day's celebration, the young man and the princess traveled back to the forest. Instead of finding the small cottage made of gray logs, they found a great gray stone castle filled with 100 servants. And it was there that they dwelt in happiness for the rest of their lives. The end.